I read one of the weirdest, gayest, psychedelic trips of DC Comics I've ever seen. The other day I was ruffling through some of my old comics and decided to pull one out and read it for the very first time since BC, before COVID. It was titled The World's Finest Comics number 289 from 1982. One simply called online as the comic with the super sex worms. We start off with a gritty monologue of Batman fighting crime throughout Gotham City. He then finds a mugging taking place and beats the criminal to a bloody pulp, but only to find the victims had already died. This is supposed to parallel his parents' death. We then move over to some hikers who are about to get hit by a boulder before Superman swoops down and saves them. They then thank Superman and say he must have the whole lousy world in his hands. Superman then takes it a little too personally and starts reminiscing about him being alone and his planet being destroyed. Now we enter the Batcave where Batman is reminiscing about the mugging victims and his parents. Superman pops in just out of nowhere. Batman apparently was going to contact him with the Justice League signal. Wouldn't the Justice League signal be used for emergencies? They both decide they're going to go to the Fortress of Solitude to console each other because they're both having a hard time, and that's totally understandable. Here's what Superman and Batman say to each other, and this is where it turns a little sus. Just a little. Superman says, "I suspect, friend, that we could both use some solitude. But I think to that it would be better in neither of us to spend this night alone. You'll get no argument from this quarter, Superman. And since I am hardly in a mood for company of drafts and bats, let's go." I mean, if Superman wants to date the broodiest man in the world, he can date him. They get to the Fortress of Solitude, and for whatever reason, Superman decides to point a giant arrow at his Fortress of Solitude. He has a giant arrow. Where did that come from? Why? Now if people go to the Arctic, then they're gonna find it, and then they're gonna be like, "Oh, what's this arrow pointing here? There must be life. Oh, it's Superman's Fortress of Solitude, oh my gosh." They then talk to each other about each other's emotional turmoils. Batman talks about his troubles with his parents dying and the mugging victims from earlier. Superman tries to console him, saying, "I know, Batman." And Batman says, "No, you don't know, Superman. Not really." Now we get to Superman's. Batman's was totally understandable. He needed to vent about it. That's totally fine. But Superman, he vents about his planet being destroyed. Okay, Superman, you grew up here. You're an Earthling, basically. And then he says, "Just as my real parents were killed on Krypton, came apart in cosmic cataclysm. There we go. Now, I feel that's super disrespectful. You know, fuck the people who took me in and raised me with as much love and care as you could possibly give a fucking mutant child that could murder someone with a single look." And I totally get Superman feeling alone. That's totally understandable. And then they shake hands, like gentlemen. And Superman says, and I quote, "We fit each other like a hand in a glove." It is official. Superman and Batman are in love. It is canon, written right here in the World's Finest comic number 289. Superman then says, "My alarm system, something's approaching from space." They then see a meteor falling to the ground. Superman then investigates it with his X-ray vision, but he can't see inside it, so it must be lined with lead, and he suspects it to be dangerous. Batman says it doesn't necessarily make it dangerous. This makes me think that if Superman cannot see through something, it is therefore dangerous. So he tries to intercept it. It lets out this really bright flash and blinds Superman momentarily. The meteor lands, and it starts opening, and you see an alien slugworm. It automatically dies. So Superman takes it back to his lab. The slugs come alive. They weren't dead, merely in the form of suspended animation brought by the Arctic cold. They then spew out this purple aura, then start levitating some guns, which then start shooting at Superman and Batman. And while Superman is breaking the guns, he says, "The aliens must be responsible because I deactivated these things before putting them on display." So Batman says, then they're serving as mere intermediary vessels. So they're using their psychic energies, as Batman puts it, to use these guns as vessels. So kind of like magic.
You're a wizard, Harry.
Batman then gets shot with Brainiac's neural inhibitor, and he gets neural inhibited for a few moments before Superman is able to wake him. Superman then shoots the slugs with a gun that the slugs were using. The slugs were using these guns as vessels that were previously unarmed, and they stopped using their psychic energy, and Superman picks up one of the guns and shoots them. I am honestly suspecting Superman of lying to Batman because the guns were unarmed and the slugs were using their psychic energies to use them as vessels to attack them. But now Superman's able to use one of those guns to basically freeze them for a bit, and it looks like he's specifically using the Brainiac neural inhibitor that was used on Batman. Another meteor comes down, and Superman goes out to investigate, wants to destroy it, but Batman convinces him not to. Batman decides to use Superman's telepathic communicator. Superman now has a telepathic communicator. Superman's Fortress of Solitude has more equipment than the Batcave. Where is Batman's telepathic communicator? The communicator kind of explains why Superman popped in on Batman at the perfect moment. He's spying on his frenemies, or should I say lovers. Anyways, he uses the telepathic communicator to communicate with the slugs, and the slugs go on this huge spiel about who made them, why, blah blah blah. They were made by the Krill, who became immortal by turning themselves into mechanical beings, but lost the capacity for emotions. So now they seek out emotions and really want them back. So they made the slugs to feed off of emotions in hopes of getting them. It was really not something that I felt like reading all the way through. Kind of drowned some of it out because it just went on and on. Superman brings back the meteor to the Fortress of Solitude, and the other slugs kind of hatch out of the meteor rock. I'm just gonna read this whole page because it is a lot to process. Then begins an awkward groping, a smaller questing at the end of their overall and far less intimate quest. Tentative undulations unlike a bizarre mating ritual followed by physical linking, symbiotic mating, and psychic synergy. The slugs then say, "We are now whole, and like our creators ready to attain our leap of evolution, we may survive now only by feeding on the emotion of your entire world. Our whole life here would be one we cannot even contemplate, and so we must surrender the gift of emotion and die. And we thank you profoundly for granting us a precious gift." Batman and Superman then cry, saying they lived only to die. Thank you for letting me share with you the painful and yet wonderful experience that was this book.